Starting us off at number 10 is the Devil's Bible, also known as the Codex Gigas. Back in the 13th century, there was a monk who was sentenced to be walled up alive because he broke his sacred vows. Obviously, this guy wasn't a fan of dying, so what did he do? He promised the monastery that if they let him live, he would write a book that would contain all human knowledge in a day. Yikes, that might be worse than death. In order to fulfill his promise, he sold his soul to the devil himself. Supposedly, this Devil's Bible contained a complete Latin translation of the Bible and multiple other texts, such as medical formulas and even instructions for performing exorcisms. This book was created using more than 160 animal skins and apparently takes 2 people just to lift it. Although, mysteriously, this book became a bit lighter because 12 pages are actually missing. Rumor has it, these pages contain satanic rituals to summon the devil himself. Of course, there is no way in knowing unless we read it for ourselves, so if any of you hardcore readers out there get a chance to take a peek, let me know in the comments.
Okay, at number 9 now, we have the Safaitic rock scripts. In Jordan's Black Desert, among the scorched sand, lie some rocks with very strange writing on them left by people who lived there over 2,000 years ago. They contain images of horses, antelopes, lions, and birds. Archaeological evidence also seems to show these people had access to abundant water. If you look around the desert there now, none of that is there. The writing belongs to a language family known as Safaitic script. It's an almost haunting discovery to find this in the middle of the desert, ancient writing of a world that has since vanished. Okay, next up at number 8 now, we have the Comox Valley Pebbles. In 2016, archaeologists were working at a Comox First Nation tribal site on Vancouver Island. Now, among a lot of the finds there, they found 80 pebbles with inscriptions on them. Each one had a symbol of either a tree, a feather, or the sign for fertility. They're thought to be over 2,000 years old, but other than that, the archaeologists don't really know what the patterns mean. To find so many of them indicates the symbols did hold some great importance to the people who lived there, but their meaning still eludes us. Next up at number 7 now, we have the Tourist. In July 2017, Polish archaeologists found messages carved into the walls of the tombs at the Valley of the Kings, written by tourists. That's right, the 2,000-year-old scribbles were written in ancient Greek and were left there by Greek philosophers who were following Plato. The writing was mainly reviews of what the tourists thought of the tombs there, kind of like a 2,000-year-old Yelp review. Little did they know that these reviews would be read 2,000 years in the future. Coming at number 6 now, we have the sword. In 1825, a strange sword with a cryptic code on it was found in an English river. The now 800-year-old sword had an 18-long string of letters on its blade, and nobody knows what it says. Some have said the sword shows Viking origins, while others say it's more medieval European. The sword now lies in the British Library's Magna Carta exhibition, and they have been appealing for anyone out there trying to help them decipher the message. Moving on to number 5, we have the Zhuangzhou relics. China has had civilizations living there for a very long time. In 2013, archaeologists digging at the Zhuangzhou relic site made a shocking discovery. They found artifacts with 5,000-year-old inscriptions on them. That's about 1,400 years older than what they thought was the most ancient written Chinese language. Experts studying the text think they found a 6-word string of shapes strung together to make a sentence, but it will be a long way to discovering the hidden message this writing holds. I think everyone will be fascinated though to discover what the text says, because it is just so old. Think about it, when it was written, there were actually still mammoths walking the earth. How's that for a mind blow? Next up at number 4 now, we have the Rosetta Stone. The meaning of this stone isn't hidden anymore, but it's too good to leave off the list. The block of granite was discovered in 1799 and was found to be from Egypt's Ptolemy dynasty, almost 2,000 years old. The text at the top was written in ancient Egyptian using hieroglyphs. Now, at the time of its discovery, nobody knew how to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was a language lost in time. However, the Rosetta Stone also contained another text at the bottom. It appeared to be exactly the same message, but written in ancient Greek, a language that is very much understood. Armed with this, experts began to decode the hidden meanings of the hieroglyphs and translate every piece of writing they could find. Alright, at number 3 now guys, we have the Makeva writing. Now, a Makeva is an ancient Jewish ritual bath. Many of them have been found in Israel, but one in particular has archaeologists stumped. One of these baths was found in Jerusalem in 2015. It's thought to be about 2,000 years old and contains a number of words and symbols on the wall there that have not yet been deciphered. There's images of boats and palm trees scattered all over the wall. Some of the letters are in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. They also date to around the same time he lived. Experts say estimate this is a very significant find. They just want to understand the message. Moving on to the number 2 spot now, we have the Shugborough Inscription. In the grounds of England's Shugborough Hall, you'll find an 18th century monument commissioned by a man called Thomas Anson. On it, there's an inscription of 2 lines. The first line reads OUOSVAVV, while the second is a D and an M separated by a large space. It's believed that this is a Latin inscription of sorts, but nobody knows anything more than that. Countless people have tried to decipher this over the years. Even men like Charles Darwin and Charles Dickens have tried and they failed. It looks like this cryptic message will never be decoded, but that doesn't stop many people from trying even to this day. And finally at number 1 now guys, we have the Indus Script. Experts know that the Indus Valley people and their culture were the precursor to many other cultures and languages found throughout India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Malaysia. So, you think that everyone would know how to read their language, right? Wrong! Over 4,000 items have been found with the Indus language on it, mainly ranging from 4,500 to 4,000 years old. Experts have yet to understand what any of them mean. The problem is, the length of the average script they find is so short that they can't study it for repeated patterns to try and figure out what the symbols mean.
Starting off this countdown, we have the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians did a number of rituals after someone died to ensure they made their way to the afterlife. First off, the dead were put to rest surrounded by their personal items. Their tombs were filled with tools, food, wine, perfume, household items, clothes, etc. Everything they believed they would need for the afterlife. In fact, the food was carefully preserved to ensure it would last them for their long journey to the afterlife. Then they had the embalming process and the canopic jars. So the Egyptians made sure to preserve the vital organs for the afterlife. They did this by carefully removing the organs from the dead and placing them in jars. One jar was for the lungs, one was for the stomach, the other was for the intestines, and one for the liver. The heart was always kept in the body though. Again, all of this was done to ensure the individual got to the afterlife with no problem. And lastly, we have the burial mask. People of power were often buried with a burial mask on. These masks were made to resemble the person that they were placed on. It was done so that the spirits would recognize the body after death and help them to the underworld. Furthermore, the mask was filled with oils which helped with the mummification process. And lastly, the Egyptians also created something known as the Book of the Dead, which helped them prepare for the afterlife where Osiris, the god of the underworld, would judge them.
Coming in at number 9 is the NAZCA lines. Most of us have heard of crop circles before, but what about the NAZCA lines? The NAZCA lines, just like crop circles, are actually named geoglyphs. Now, what is a geoglyph? A geoglyph is a large design produced on the ground and usually formed by clastic rocks, stones, stone fragments, and gravel or earth. The NAZCA lines were first discovered in the 1930s when pilots were flying over the NAZCA desert in southern Peru and came across these massive drawings. The ancient NAZCA civilization made up these drawings consisting of animals, humans, and plants around 2,000 years ago. There are said to be over 100 of these drawings spanning a total of 50 square kilometers. And while many can identify who and what created these massive drawings, no one alive actually knows the reason behind them. Scholars theorize that these were massive signs to give incoming sailors directions, or that they were a way to communicate with those above us. Dun dun dun! Here at number 8 we have the Roman dodecahedrons. All over the world for hundreds of years, random stone and bronze objects have been popping up in fields and sometimes even in people's yards. These objects are called the Roman dodecahedrons. These objects have 12 sides with a small circle on each and pegs sticking out of every single corner. Experts have dated these objects all the way back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE, but once again, they have no idea of their purpose. Many believe these objects resemble an ancient nautical devices, or were used to sow winter grains or even calibrate water pipes for Roman architects. In the end, all of these are just theories and cannot be told for sure. So maybe go and invest in a metal detector and see what you can find. At number 7 we have the King List. Dating all the way back to the 3rd millennium BCE, this giant slab known as the King List lists all of the Sumerian kings with their respective dynasties, locations, and the times they were in power. This may not seem like much of a mystery to you, but the mystery isn't the list of the Sumerian kings on the slab, but what is actually included in the list of kings. There are mythological events inscribed on the slab, as well as the events of the Great Flood and the tales of Gilgamesh, meaning that the stories from the Old Testament could indeed be true and that the kings included on the list were actually gods or demigods. Hopefully all that power didn't go to their heads. At number 6, we have the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism. Back in 1900, a group of sponge divers discovered a shipwreck in the Mediterranean dating all the way back to 70 to 60 BCE. These divers salvaged 3 pieces of bronze making up what is now known as the ANTIKYTHERA mechanism. This shoebox-sized artifact stunned scholars for over a century due to the fact that the object's gears and internal mechanisms were far beyond any of the known Greek tech of the time. Some even believe that this object is proof of ancient aliens' visitations to Earth. Although in the late 20th century, X-rays showed that the object is designed to track astronomical movements and was confirmed later by CT scans that revealed inscriptions for what was basically an ancient computer. While the object's use has now been confirmed, what is still puzzling is the advanced construction and precision of this tool that is believed to be way more advanced than what was available at the time. I don't know. If you ask me, I say aliens. At number 5, we have the stone spheres of Costa Rica. Ever since the 1940s, scientists have been digging up these ancient mysterious spheres in the Dicus Delta of Costa Rica. Originally discovered by agricultural forays by the United Fruit Company, small stone spheres ranging from a few centimeters wide to 2 meters in diameter and weighing over 16 tons have been popping up everywhere in the Dicus Delta. Every single one of these spheres is man-made and made up of an igneous stone known as granodiorite. Many of these stone spheres have been moved to high-profile locations throughout Costa Rica, and some are even now privately owned. Everyone seems to love them for their decoration, but the coolest thing about them is that absolutely no one knows why, how, or who made these strange objects. Seems to be a common theme, huh? At number 4, we have the bog bodies of Northern Europe. Ever since the 18th century, hundreds and hundreds of well-preserved human bodies have been discovered in the peat bogs of Northern Europe. Some of these bodies have been dated all the way back to 8000 BCE. Some of you may be familiar with the famous Toland man, who was discovered back in 1950 by 2 Danish farmers in a small town in Denmark. The Toland man is believed to be from the pre-Roman Iron Age of the 3rd century BCE. His body was so well preserved that scientists were able to look at the contents of his stomach to determine where he lived. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dewey, this sounds amazingly gross and cool, but where's the mystery, my dude? Well, I'm glad you asked. All of the bodies that have been found have no explanation as to why they were placed in the bogs, nor why this way of disposal would be utilized. There are only speculations that these people were either sacrifices or social outcasts who were fated to meet their doom. Wow. And I thought high school kids were mean. Coming in at number 3 is the underwater ruins of Japan. Just under the surface off the coast of Yonaguni-jima is Japan's very own Atlantis. First discovered back in 1995, divers and researchers believed the findings to be nothing more than just a series of weird rock formations that included straight lines and right angles. Later, there were researchers that discovered a large stone gateway, carved stairways, and streets to huge vaulting towers. Many believe the underwater mystery to be the fallen city of the Jomon people. Experts believe that the city didn't fall into the sea like other fabled underwater cities, but actually slowly submerged over thousands of years. It is believed that this site could hold secrets and answers to all of the other theorized underwater cities around the world, such as Atlantis. Now, we could continue to theorize, or we could just believe that Aquaman starring Jason Momoa is actually a documentary and he currently does live in the ocean. I could see it. At number 2, we have the PIRI REIS map. In 1929, this old map was found in the Sultan's palace in Istanbul, Turkey. A legendary commander of the Ottoman fleet by the name of PIRI REIS, who lived from 1465 to 1553, is the author of the map. Reis's map is extremely precise. So precise that it actually includes the continent of Antarctica. But wait, hold the phone. Antarctica wasn't discovered until 1773 by British Captain James Cook. But yet, here is PIRI REIS's map showing Antarctica back in 1513. Was Antarctica actually just discovered much earlier than originally thought? Or did James Cook just take credit for someone else's hard work? We might never know. Finally, coming in at number 1 is the infamous Big Daddy Stonehenge. In case you've been living under a prehistoric rock for the last few thousand years, you've probably heard of Stonehenge. Stonehenge is a giant prehistoric monument that is located in England and dates back to 3000 BC. The monument consists of a ring of standing stones all weighing around 25 ton, originally from a quarry located 25 kilometers or 15.53 miles away from the current monument. Not one person knows how these ancient people could have moved these massive stones without the use of a wheel or pulley, or why they were even formed in the first place. Is it an ancient observatory? Healing place? Did ancient aliens create it as a landing pad? We may never actually know.
Now though, we are getting into our number 10 with the Rongorongo writing. 26 tablets were found on the remote Easter Island, thousands of miles out in the Pacific Ocean. Written on them were glyphs which historians have not been able to decipher since they were discovered over 150 years ago. The images are shaped like humans, animals, plants, and geometric patterns. Every single symbol contains a head that is facing up, forward, or to the right. Each one is about a centimeter high. That's pretty much all we know though. It's thought that the writing may contain clues as to how the civilization that lived there ended up collapsing.
Coming in at number 9, we have ancient Greece. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. The ancient Greeks had a quite different view on the afterlife. They believed that when a person passed away, they would take a ferry and go to the underworld to Hades. But no matter if you were good or bad during your lifetime, it was believed that everyone just went down there to the same spot. And obviously it's no sunshine and rainbows down there, it's pretty cheerless. So everyone that was buried had to be done so with a Greek coin in their mouth. This was enough to pay for the ferryman for the trip across the river Styx and to Hades. Well, then the Greeks were like, screw this, why should there be equal misery for all? So then they began the good go on to the afterlife. So from the 6th century BC onwards, they believed that if they practiced certain secret rites, then they would get to go somewhere that was a happier place. Moving on to number 8, we have reincarnation. A number of cultures believe in reincarnation, particularly Buddhists. So they believe that after you die, let's say you have unfinished business left on Earth, then your soul will be transferred into another body to enjoy life again. The reincarnation process will continue on and on until you accomplish everything that you believe you have been set out to do. By doing so, you will reach nirvana. It's the end of suffering and a heavenly paradise where your soul can rest. Moving on to number 7, we have the Chinese burial rituals. Similar to ancient Egyptians, the ancient Chinese believed that the dead should be buried with everything they would need in the afterlife, such as their personal property. In fact, people of power were often buried alongside their servants and soldiers. So they would engage in human sacrifice in order to make sure that the individual would be protected by their soldiers in the afterlife, but also would have an assistant there as well. That was until Emperor Yin Shi Huang. When his tomb was unearthed in 1974, they found an army of 8,000 life-sized terracotta soldiers. They were designed to be his protectors in the afterlife. So instead of sacrificing 8,000 people, they just created these ones instead, which is a much better choice if you ask me. Coming in at number 6, we have the water burial. A number of cultures, especially in Nordic countries, engage in something known as water burials. It's a sacred ritual in which the dead are placed in coffins and then at the top of cliffs facing towards water. Or they would place the bodies in something they called death ships. Then their bodies were placed on a river or ocean and pushed out. This was said to give the bodies back to the gods. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Jainism. There are approximately 4 million people that follow Jainism. This is the belief that there are a number of gods out there, as well as they believe in reincarnation. Similar to Buddhism, they believe that they will continue to reincarnate until they reach liberation. Liberation is only achieved if they avoid bad karma and cause no harm. Now here's the thing. The reincarnation process is pretty dark. So when people die and don't achieve liberation, they might have to go through 8 hells of suffering before their rebirth. Each hell gets colder and colder and gets worse and worse. The soul is subjected to a number of torturous things before they reach the final hell and are placed back on Earth for another chance to reach liberation. Once they do, their soul gets a place among the gods. In our 4th spot today, we have the Chinese traditional religion. Individuals who follow the Chinese traditional religion believe in a peaceful life after death. In order to do so, the individual needs to perform specific rituals to honor their ancestors, like partaking in prayers, ancestor worship, longevity practices, and more. Now upon death, the god Cheng Wang will determine whether someone's spirit is good enough to go to paradise, or if they will go to hell and then reincarnate to try again at life. Moving on to number 3, we have the Aztecs. The Aztecs believed that when someone died, they would enter one of 3 places in the afterlife. Sorry if I pronounced this wrong, but they are the Mictlan, Tlalocan, or the Sun. Mixclan is the underworld. Those that lost their lives from horrible causes would end up there. Tlalocan is a paradise ruled by a rain deity. So those that lost their lives by drowning or by getting struck by lightning or even by dying from a disease associated with the rain deity would be sent there. And those that lost their lives during childbirth or any fallen warriors would transform into hummingbirds. In our second spot today, we have the Mayan burial rituals. The ancient Mayans viewed getting to the afterlife as a dangerous trip. As a result, they buried the dead in a way that they believed was easier for the soul to pass through the afterlife and into paradise. So the dead were buried with maize, aka corn, in their mouths. That to them was a symbol of the rebirth of their souls. It was also said to provide them with nourishment on their journey. Additionally, their bodies were positioned in their graves in the direction of the Mayan paradise. They believed this would make it easier for them to get to the afterlife. And lastly, their bodies were sprinkled with red cinnabar and wrapped in cotton. This was said to be a disguise for them to avoid being attacked by demons while on their journey. Everyone who passed away had to go on this journey except for those who died at childbirth or died from sacrifice, battle, or took their own lives. If this was the case, it was believed that their soul would pass directly into paradise. And in our number one spot today, we have the lost souls. Now let's talk about the poor souls that can't find peace and are stuck here on Earth. These are what we know of as ghosts. Now ghosts are often tied to the location of their death. They often are stuck in that area if their death was sudden, like they were murdered. They then may start off not realizing that they are actually dead. Sadly, most ghosts won't be able to leave until they find peace, whether that be getting justice or help catch their killer or saying goodbye to their family. It makes it even harder though when they don't receive a proper burial or if their body was never found. These ghosts are stuck haunting the earth until their body is found and they can reunite with it, or until they receive a proper send-off, for example, a funeral. If not, they might never reach the afterlife.